All right, I call the Village of Rhinebeck Planning Board for November 6, 2018 to order. First item on the agenda is the public hearing for Amalgamated Agricultural Associates. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved. I'll second that.
Okay, would you like to make a presentation to the public?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Victoria Polidoro, Logan Mills and Shaw. You've all seen me here a lot of times for this project. We just realized we've been here since December 2016,
Wow.
working on this.
Guys,
We're here tonight for a public hearing on the revised site plan for the farm market. The project would rehabilitate an existing commercial structure located in the gateway to the village and preserve the remainder of the land as a working farm field. It would be open year-round and provide residents and visitors with the opportunity to buy locally produced vegetables and other farm products, such as cheese, 7 days a week. There's no restaurant proposed. In fact, there never was, but that was an ongoing point of contention for a lot of neighbors. So I just want to reiterate, there is no restaurant proposed as part of this farm market. And the prepared food operation has now been scaled down considerably. It's all grab-and-go foods, and they'll be prepared off-site. There may be coffee, hard cider, soups, those sorts of things seasonally available. But there's only 3 interior tables proposed. And if any of you have ever been in a restaurant business or you understand how hard the business is, 3 restaurant tables is really not sufficient to operate a comparable restaurant. So this is a grab-and-go operation that supplements the farm market and what it can offer. In the summer months, there's also going to be outdoor picnic tables. The biggest change from the proposed plans that were presented at the last public hearing last year is the architects. Warren Temple Smith has prepared new plans and is going to review them in detail, but there's now a long sloped roof, porch, and other facade treatments that are a significant improvement over the current condition, and it will be a more welcoming entrance for people entering the village. Last time we had a public hearing, and also the last time we were before the board, there's always been a lot of discussion about parking. Is there going to be adequate parking? This project proposes to provide parking at a standard of 1 per 250 square feet. This is the most conservative estimate. Your code actually allows 1 per 250 or 1 per 500. And so we're providing parking at the very high end of your code. It's code compliant, and we actually exceed the required parking. We saw the comments from the fire and police department requesting additional spaces. We all hope that the business is that successful and that additional spaces are required at some point. But at this point, there's really no reason to build more spaces than are required by the code. It's code compliant, and there's no basis for additional spaces at this point. But if it's successful and more parking is needed, we can have another conversation about that. Also, in response to comments that we've been receiving from the planning board, there are now notes that have been added to the plans prohibiting deliveries before 7 a.m., which is about when you start to hear school buses in the area. So a box truck's not going to be any more inconvenient than a school bus. And during peak operational hours, and that's because of how the parking lot works. Christian Paggi has prepared a revised site plan which addresses stormwater, parking, lighting, and also the DOT comment letter that we received about 2 weeks ago, October 18th. We're also not addressing signs. We've shown locations, but not the actual wording of the signs, and we hope to come back for that at a later time. We really want to get the site plan down and approved. At past meetings, there was a lot of concern about the use of the property, but I just want to remind everyone in the public and the board that the use issue has been definitively resolved. The property is located in Dutchess County Agricultural District 20. The ZEO determined that this was a farm operation. The Zoning Board of Appeals upheld that determination, and Ag and Markets has weighted that farm markets are considered agricultural operations in a farm district. I'm now going to yield the floor to Warren Temple Smith, but I do request that you give me the opportunity to address the board again at the end of the public hearing. Thank you.
Good evening. Really no changes to this plan from those we reviewed with the board at the last meeting. We're showing a basement plan, showing all storage down there. That was a request, I think, of the board at the previous meeting. The elevations of the building just show a requested change from a door to a window at this southwest corner, but I think the renderings give a better picture to the public of what is independent to the building, which is different from what was seen at the last public hearing, as Victoria mentioned. So I'm going to pull down the elevation sheet. So in response to, I guess, a lot of concerns the last time around, we looked at the building, which had previously intended to retain the flat roof that was there. It was going to be painted white, but a flat roof and a somewhat contemporary looking building. We listened to the comments from the neighbor and certainly the clients, and we all agreed that something that looked a little more like a traditional farm market would fit better here. So we designed a truss gabled roof running end to end along facing Route 9, and another gable coming out the back to cover that part, and a little cupola at the top just to let some light in. We've wrapped the building on three sides with a porch, which at the front will provide some area for display of produce seasonally. This time of year, it might be pumpkins and corn stalks and things like that, but earlier would have been apples and so forth. But just to give a sense of what would be there, there's an opportunity to have some hanging baskets and things like that. The entrance to the building is on the front with some large windows, so people inside can see out and you can see that there's something going on inside when it's open. And the porch on the side facing the parking lot is really just a sheltered access from the parking lot to the front door. But all the access is at the front. There will be a service door and exit at the back, and the actual service vehicles that would bring supplies in on a periodic basis would actually come in through a door in the back corner of the lot, which Christian will make more clear on the site plan. But so the building looks quite a bit different from the last time we had a public hearing about it. And again, we've tried to respond to concerns expressed by the board and by the public to make this enhancement at the south end of the village as people drive in, sort of readily be identified as a farm market. As Victoria mentioned, signage will not be addressed tonight. There is an existing sign out front for the Hobson's Appliance and GE or whatever it said. Eventually, we'll have a proposal for a new replacement sign in that location, but it would be a monument sign or a freestanding sign on the ground, as the existing one was. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board or the public has. And if not immediately, certainly Christian can present the site plan, including the changes, and we can review that.
Yeah, I'm Christian Paggi, the engineer for the applicant for this project. Just to give a brief overview for the public of the proposed changes associated with the site plan, what we're showing is bumping out the existing parking area to create additional parking space towards the southerly portion of the property in the field area. We're also proposing to remove a significant portion of the asphalt in front of the building and convert that to lawn and landscape area, providing a sidewalk along Route 9 in front of the building and up towards the front of the building towards the entrance to really speed up that part of the building. These changes will result in some increase in hardscape area. So from a stormwater standpoint, we're mitigating the impervious area by providing an amount of porous pavers in the parking stalls so that there'll actually be a net reduction in impervious surfaces. We've done soil testing out here. The soils are great, so they should definitely be able to accommodate the porous pavers. Along with the parking improvements, there's some realignment of the asphalt and the entrance from Route 9 to create the parking area and also to provide a refuse enclosure area on the southeast side. That will be enclosed and screened from Mill Street with some new landscaping both south and north of the Mill Street access. to the site. The Mill Street access is proposed to remain as existing, with some existing pavement on the north side of it to be removed to more clearly delineate that entrance. Again, along with the landscaping, we're proposing, in addition to the Mill Street side, we're proposing some lower shrubs and decorative grasses in front of the building, along the sidewalk, on the building side of the sidewalk, as well as 3 large street trees, one on the southerly side of the Route 9 access, and then 2 on the northerly side, one in the south corner of the building and one in the north corner. In response to the DOT, we've revised the sidewalk at the northerly side of the site. It's been rotated to be perpendicular to Mill Street to provide an access at a shorter, a more narrow part of Mill Street, so people aren't directed closer to Route 9. That's now shown on the plan. We're also showing a new crosswalk, a zebra striped crosswalk, and curb ramp to the existing. There's actually an existing sidewalk that runs along Mill Street on this side, so we are providing a connection to that point as well. Let's see, to go through some of the changes since the previous time we were here with the planning board, there were some concerns relative to site circulation and vehicle, truck circulation specifically through the site. We have removed one of the parking stalls. Previously there was a parking stall on here, and the sidewalk actually extended out to provide what's similar to like an island. So that was all removed, and that created a much wider space for the loading area. So a delivery truck can access the site from Route 9 and actually maneuver and reverse to the landing zone, landing area, and there will be adequate visibility and maneuvering space for any patron ingress and egress from the Mill Street access. So that created a lot more room, and we ended up elongating and kind of rotating the refuse enclosure off to the corner like this for 2 reasons. One, to create some additional space for a new parking spot so that we didn't lose any parking. And 2, this elongated apron to the trash enclosure will actually provide some space for truck circulation. Both delivery trucks and garbage trucks will be able to pull into this apron and have adequate room to back up and make a 3-point turn to go back out to Route 9 without having to impact Mill Street at all, and without blocking or impacting any parking stalls. So even if there were people parked, we're anticipating to have deliveries off-peak, and garbage pickup usually is early in the morning. So there shouldn't be really anybody parked in those stalls, but to mitigate any concerns with that, we provided this little apron and kind of realigned some of the parking so that any delivery trucks could maneuver this site without even impacting any of those parking stalls. And that's shown on sheet 2 of the plan. It's a circulation plan. Let's see. So that was really it with the changes. Regarding the landscaping, the street trees, again, we're hoping to continue that discussion with the planning board tonight. Previously, it was recommended that we provide a 4th street tree. It's our feeling that what we're proposing now is appropriate for this site. This is really the entrance to the village on the south side. And when you talked about kind of a cadence for the street trees, having a longer gap in between these trees as you approach the village, I believe would be an appropriate cadence leading up to the village. So having 4 trees versus the 3, we feel would be a little bit abrupt and crowded in this area. So again, we do just hope to at least have that conversation again tonight with the board. And if there's any questions on the site plan, I'd be happy to answer.
Before we open it to the public, there were some comments from DOT, which some of them were addressed about sight lines coming out of the Route 9 entrance and exit, of their desire to have no parking signs along Route 9 to make sure nobody, when the parking lot filled up, would park on Route 9 because it would be very dangerous. And of course the perpendicular crosswalk which was put in. The Rhinebeck Police and Fire Department also came to look and met with Mr. Fenton, and they were concerned about parking on Mill, because Mill is a very, very narrow street. And their comments were, I believe both police and fire felt, if the current configuration with 2 rows of parking was to be maintained, they would want no parking on Mill all the way to Parsonage Street. And if a 3rd row of parking were put in, then they would have no problem with no parking from the rear entrance of the farm stand to the corner of Route 9. So that was a request of the fire and police department, because it is a very narrow street, should people park there. I also have some letters from some people who didn't attend, or couldn't make it tonight. I'll quickly summarize them because it'll take too long to read them. We have a letter from Vincent Mullen, who lives at 32 Mill Street, who says it's adjacent to the farm property. I reviewed the proposed project plans and fully support the above project without reservation.
He doesn't live there, David, he just owns it.
He
It was a big
owns
lot.
it.
Okay.
He owns a lot.
And Catherine Rutgers, who lives across the street on Mill Street. And again, most of these comments are the same. They worry about the street parking and the hours of operation, the noise from delivery trucks and garbage trucks in the hours of operation. There's another from Nicole and Michael McGrath on 15 Mill. Hours of operation, traffic, noise levels, and increased garbage and litter on Mill Street. And a letter from Leslie Kidder and Andrew Janowski, 6281 Route 9. And they seem to be concerned. They don't think they can safely do business in this spot where traffic travels fast. That was the concerns of us as well as DOT, that it's 30 miles an hour once you hit the motel, but people do not go down. And when they're coming the other way, heading south, the minute they hit the cemetery, they just pick up speed coming up that hill. So there are concerns about the speed of law. I know that the village board is getting those electronic signs, which should be coming soon. You know, the speed limit is 30, you're doing 42. If that has any effect on slowing people down, I don't know. But they will be installed at the entrances to the village shortly. We also feel as a potential business owner is not being honest about the business plan and effect the business would have on this residential area. We feel this business will affect our quiet residential area and not keep with the zoning of the residential neighborhood. So those are the concerns of the people who could not make it here tonight. And we certainly have a lot of people. And if you'd like to step up to the microphone, and we have a lot of comments. So did we get a list? We didn't have a sign-in list. We did? Anybody not sign the sign-in list? All right, Ryan, can you call out the names of the people on that list? If you can keep your comments to a few minutes so that we get everybody a chance to speak. Why don't you give them a new page and then you can start reading off the page that we've got.
I have a quick question. Just, you mentioned picnic tables. Are you talking about putting them on the covered porch on the south side, or?
There are 4 picnic tables on the plan.
So
3 in the
they're out
front and 1 on the
front.
side.
Oh, okay, over here. All right, but out on the, okay, out in the front.
Right, 3 in the front and 1 on the side.
Gotcha. Sorry, I missed that.
Actually, two on the front, and then one on the side, then there's a
Oh, we
bike
keep
rack.
having different.
Okay.
Okay, that's a bike rack.
So, 3 exterior tables.
3 exterior
Limited
tables
to
and a
3
bike
exterior
rack.
tables.
Okay. Couldn't see it on the small plans. Ryan, you want to call out the names of the people as they, and come up to the microphone, give your name and your address, and
Please excuse if I butcher your name. Dean McGave?
McGuire?
Oh, Dennis McGuire.
Does he have a handwriting?
Penmanship, Denny. Penmanship.
membership.
Dennis McGuire, Primrose Hill Road in Rhinebeck. We talked about the speeding on 9 and congestion. We had a business there before for as long as I can remember. The speeding, my profession was state trooper. People have been speeding on Route 9 since Route 9 was put in there. They try to control it through the state, the sheriff, and the village, and they do an appropriate job for what they deal with. But if they're not there, people are going to be speeding. congestion of the people here. Weekends, you know, here in the village, you know, the farmer's market next door. People complain all the place about finding a place to park. This place is, when I look at it, it's a beautiful site, and it was prepared properly, so when people are coming to Rhinebeck, they can see this beautiful building here. If you come to Rhinebeck from some other directions, you may see burned out buildings, and you may see unoccupied restaurants, you may see junkyards. This is beautiful. It was put in, very good job, and I want to commend you, young lady, that it's not if this succeeds, this is going to succeed, because people want to come to Rhinebeck for this. They don't want to come to Rhinebeck and see skyscrapers. They want to see something from the country, the beautiful trees, a beautiful place looking like this. So I ask you to approve the building of this business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next name?
Mr. Jeff Hicks.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Hicks. Most of you know, I run the Rhinebeck Farm. I also farm the subject property, formerly Hobson's. This piece has been in continued agriculture operation for 50 years. People that say that it hasn't been in agriculture don't know what they're talking about. I used to plant vegetables at this site, most recently potatoes, but I had to stop that because too many people were stealing them. The field is currently planted with barley right now. I fully support the proposed farm market site plan. I think the board should approve it tonight. I reviewed the site plan, and it will have no impact on continued agriculture operations here. I bring my tractor to the site, Mill Road or Route 9, depending on which direction I'm coming from. I generally don't leave my farm equipment there. I mean, something might happen one day where it breaks down there, but we don't leave equipment there overnight or anything. I've sat in the field and parking lot numerous times and observed the traffic when it was Hobson's. People don't want to go out the back way. They rather go out the front. Usually anybody going out the back lives in Rhinebeck. They go to the neighborhood. So there's no reason to think that there will be a significant amount of more traffic on Mill Road. The farm market will also be an improvement to what it looks like now. It's going to look a lot nicer as you come into Rhinebeck. The slope roof and the front porch as part of an agricultural community in Northern Dutchess. I ask you to approve and support the farm market. Thank you.
Warren T. Segrist.
My name is Warren T. Segrist. I grew up on 71 South Park Street, Rhinebeck. 60 years I've been there. Hobson's been there. They had no problems having delivery trucks come and drop it off stuff. Garbage truck picks up early in the morning time. I don't see any problem with that. And I'm for the farmer's market.
Thank you.
David E. Mayer.
Get my leg working here. I'm David Meyer. I've lived in Rhinebeck for the last 44 years. I'm from Indiana. And I've used Hobson's for many years, and I will use the farmer's market instead of leaving town and going to Adams or something like that. So the lease it's approved, and I live just 8 blocks from there. So I would appreciate the approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak in support of supporting the Hobson's Farm Market project. As a farm manager and associated with the farm properties supplying the market, I can speak with great confidence to our ability to provide produce, proteins including everything from fish, to chicken, to turkey, to partridges, a lot of things that we're excited about, we're doing. We're expanding, we're excited. And I can speak with great confidence to our ability to meet this goal and make it very successful. And I'd like to consider that. I apologize for my cold, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian McGuire.
Brian McGuire. I'd like to say what they plan to do there is going to make this place look beautiful compared to what it looks like now and has looked like. And it's going to bring a lot of tax money in here, so we ought to get going on this thing. Thank you.
Gwen McGuire.
I'd like to ask that you approve it also. I don't have anything else to add.
Christine Pizzuto? Or Pizzuto? Zuni.
Hi guys, nice
Hi.
to see some of you again. I remember seeing you last time that we were here during this process. As one of the farmers from here, Mance, I can say that we were all really excited to hear that this plan is something that's actually moving forward since the last time that we went through this. It's sort of a big deal for us to be able to see all the nice things that we grow on shelves, sort of, instead of necessarily being, put into a distribution, van and brought to different restaurants in the area, which is also a really nice way, for us to sell our produce. But there is an added sense of pride in agriculture if you can see the things that you sell on shelves, the things that you're growing. One of the main points, and I'm not really sure what the timeline is at this point or what's possible, but what we're hoping on the farm is that there, pardon me, I'm a little froggy too, just like Kevin, it's been raining a lot. We're hoping that there might be some timeliness involved because sort of in December, if you guys are familiar with growing produce, is when you really want to get your seed orders started. And so there is sort of a difference between what you want to order for if you're selling to chefs and wholesale versus what you want to sell to, direct consumer and that kind of thing. So we are trying to plan ahead to figure out exactly what we're going to be growing to make sure that the first season of this farm market is successful, of course. And it's also nice to see the new building. It's cute as a button, and that porch that's really cute too. So it'll be lovely, I think. And we hope that you support it, of course. Thank you.
Mark Stapleton?
Hi, I'm Mark Stapleton and live at 17 Mill Street. I want to refer back to the ZBA's resolution of June 6th, rather, 2017, where in their resolution they made several pretty strong statements about what they thought the planning board should take into account going forward. One of them was that they noted that the state's guidelines support the concept that each proposal must be considered upon the unique facts and circumstances of that case. It should not be overlooked that the subject property sits within a residential zone and concerns such as traffic, noise, public health and safety may require heightened sensitivity to an agricultural use that includes retail activity. Another point that they made was that reasonable restrictions and conditions on the use are within the jurisdiction of the planning board. For example, in addition to limiting the magnitude of retail activity, reasonable restrictions or conditions might include, but are not limited to, restricting access to and from Mill Street, relocating the loading zone away from the rear of the building and Mill Street, relocating parking away from Mill Street, restricting the security lighting, adding fencing and landscaping for the purpose of shielding the structure from the neighborhood view, and significantly restricting the hours of operation. And they conclude by saying, accordingly, the project is not permitted as a matter of right. So I would just ask that the planning board take the ZBA's point of view into account as they move forward.
Thank you.
Billy Van Wagner.
Billy Van Wagner, and I am in support of this project. I think that the entrance coming into the village would be a major improvement, and I feel as though it would help keep business local instead of also traveling across the river. I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Stephen Hobson.
Good evening, Steve Hobson of Hobson's, formerly. Recently retired New York State Trooper. All my years working traffic in the local area here in K-Troop, never had any issues there, accident-wise, anything major that I can recall since my grandfather built that building in the 50s. Right now, I think it looks awful, sitting the way it's been sitting, unable, kind of stagnant, if you will. When I got out of the Army, I worked there, helping my uncles deliver appliances, taking delivery appliances, bringing people's old appliances back there. We had that fenced area in the rear along Mill Street where we piled them up. I can never recall any one of my uncles or family members having any complaints from any neighbors about trucks picking them up, leaving them there. I think that this is a great asset to the village and will certainly be an icon, if you will, just like the appliance store was. Anybody who's lived here for any length of time knows the landmark. They use it as day. When you pass that, you know you're getting to the village. This will be a great way to supplement that. Thank you.
Glenn Hobson.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Hobson, formerly of the Hobson family that ran the appliance business. My dad started a radio business here in 1935. I was born in Rhinebeck, and we've always attempted to make Rhinebeck nice. He built that building in the mid-50s. It was state-of-the-art. That's long gone. This project is a super improvement to the land. I think it should go forward. Direct your attention to the north gateway to this village. It looks like garbage. This project is super, and I expect that you'll all support it. Thanks.
That's the end of the list.
That's the end of it. I had one quick question about, I didn't hear much from people on Mill Street. It was suggested by the police and the fire department that you only have to have no parking from the back entrance to Route 9 if a third row was built. The third row is not on the plans, which means we would be requesting of the village board to put up no parking signs full length of Mill. I run down that street every Saturday and Sunday. I've never seen a car parked on Mill Street. People seem to have large driveways or parking areas enough to store cars. I wanted to make sure it would not be an inconvenience to the people on Mill if the village board puts up no parking the entire length of Mill Street. Would that be, like I said, I've never seen a car parked there on Saturday or Sunday morning, and it seems to be adequate parking on the properties that are on Mill. So that way we would guarantee nobody would ever park on Mill and disturb your privacy on that street. So I see heads nodding. Is that?
One thing I would like to say is that's not how I read the comments from the police and fire. As I read it, it just said, it shows on the map parking from the entrance to Route 9, and it says and/or parking all the way down Mill Street. So they were giving us an option rather than giving us a condition.
All right, so to clarify, the issue was, since these farm markets are really popular,
there's going to be an overflow of cars, there are going to be customers that want to kind of get in and out. So they felt that the field that the farmer's market is on now is not a direct participating field to the business, and that there was a little bit of play with parking. And if we're going to come up with parking, ideally, that would be the location to put it, so there isn't any overflow into Mill Street. The thing was, if the applicant wasn't for adding the additional parking, PD and the fire department didn't want to take any chances, and they said, well, listen, then we're just going to have no parking on Mill Street at all, and basically police it that way. I mean, that's how the conversation kind of played out.
So then there would be no parking on Mill or Route 9?
Or Route 9, so there's a,
Well, DOT's request for Route 9.
DOT's requesting Route 9, so if you get very busy, what's going to happen?
Well, with all due respect to the fire department, the police department, this is different than the Sunday farmer's market where there's only a 4-hour window for everyone to come into town, grab their fresh vegetables, park, and get out of there. I mean, this is a very different animal where there are longer hours of operation.
Can I interrupt? Are you going to have any sort of events at all?
Like a grand opening?
Well, besides a grand opening, are you going to have, something for kids on this Saturday, or something for senior citizens on Wednesday afternoons, or?
I mean, I can't speak to the
Well,
programming
that's,
aspects of the
okay,
farm market,
so let me finish. That would be where the concern would come in, would be that as a farmer's market, in terms of the regular rotation of people coming in and going in and going out to access the farmer's market, probably not a big deal, but if part of the business plan is to stage events in the site that are going to bring more people in than there are parking spots, then we have a problem.
well, I mean, I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I think there's more than adequate parking. There's no rational basis here to require more parking. I mean, we exceed the parking that the code requires. We exceed your highest parking standard. No basis to require more parking.
So would you accept a restriction in terms of?
We've already stated several times, if the village wants to prohibit parking on Mill Street, it's a public road, they're free to do that. But why not take the position, or have the village take the position, a wait-and-see approach? Let's see how this plays out. There may never be a need to park on Mill Street.
Well, one of the reasons why you don't do that is, one of the reasons you don't do that is once the property owner is invested in the building, it's very difficult to back away and say, well, you can't have any more parking.
We have no control over Mill Street. We can't prohibit parking there.
What you have control over is whether or not you're going to have events that might bring in more people, more cars than you have parking for. So what I would ask would be whether or not you would be willing to accept a restriction in terms of the size of any activities that would bring in more than X number of vehicles.
Hold on,
And that
Victor,
X number?
I got to finish what I had to say also. So what it was is, when they looked at the plan and the parking was taken away along Route 9, so there's parking there now. So theoretically, if that stayed to be parking, you would have 3 rows. And so when they looked at the plan and they see an open field and it's not dedicated for tomatoes or this or that, they figured, well, what's one more row of parking? It's taking it off of Mill Street.
I understand the intention, and like I said, once this is a big success, we can come back and add more parking if needed. But to add parking now, there's a time issue. We need to go back to the drawing board. We need to design new parking, right? That's 1 to 2 months for our engineer to design new parking. Second, what they drew isn't actually feasible. There was no turnout space. It wasn't an engineered plan. So there's actually a much bigger swath of land would have to be dedicated to this new parking. It's more impervious surfaces. Plus, you're taking away farmland, and you're pushing the parking further out into the residential area. So we don't think this is something that's needed right now. And like I said, if this is an overwhelming success, we'll come back. They're going to want more parking.
Right, but if it's an overwhelming success, maybe it doesn't belong at that site.
Well,
much like if it's as successful as Adams, then it's not going to fit on a 2.5 acre site.
It's not going to be Adams. It's much smaller. It will never be Adams. its footprint.
So how did Adams start?
It did start as a farm market.
Yeah, and what size was it?
Okay, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you what size it was. It was smaller than what's proposed here, the initial Adams.
Well, this is,
Okay, so
we're proposing what we're proposing, and
Okay.
I mean, we have other uses in the village which are very busy. It's part of living in a village. There's a give and a take. There's a mixture of life and business and vehicles. And that's village life. I mean, there's always going to be some noise when you live within 100 to 50 feet of your neighbor. That's village life. You hear the garbage cans. You hear the school buses. We're not going to be able to prevent that, especially when we're talking about a farm.
But we're not necessarily asking to prevent it, but this is in a residential district.
It's a permitted use in the.
Okay, you're not,
The commercial activity is supposed to be in the center of the village according to the town plan.
the village plan. So, I mean, I understand your role in this, and I appreciate that, but part of the responsibility of the planning board is to have the foresight to try to determine.
I completely understand that's your role, and also if we were looking at something in the middle of a residential district versus we're looking at a use that's on US Route 9, it's a major highway. So a lot of these concerns about traffic and parking, they're really overstated because, you know.
All I'm saying is if police and fire want no parking on Mill and DOT wants no parking on Route 9, but if you're okay with the 19th car showing up and having to leave, if you're very successful, that's what's going to happen. There'll be no parking.
We understand
That's
that,
okay.
and we're willing to come back. We just
But what's not allowed is if those 19 and 20 and 30 and 40 cars show up and they, all of a sudden, you're parking them in the fields because having them there are more important than maintaining these important fields.
There are crops in the field, so I don't think Mr.
Well-
Hicks would appreciate us planting cars over his barley right now. I don't think that's.
Okay.
Well, the various police will give tickets to people parked on Route 9 or parked on Mill if they do that. Yes, sir.
May I?
You should come to the mic.
Do you want to
You
come
got-
up?
Along with this restrictive parking, what do we do about the restrictive parking for the farmer's market across the street on a weekend when people can't find a parking spot anyplace?
Yeah, they can. They move up Livingston Street, they
What
move
about-
South Street.
What about when the Woolen Sheep Festival come in town? What about Santa Claus? Are there restrictions on parking here? There's restrictions on Main Street. How come they're not allowed to park on Main Street? If we have a parking spot down there, where it's on paper showing where the parking spots are.
When they
So
have
there's
major events like that, the police require that South Street only has parking on one side. You know, they limit it to allow fire and ambulances to get through. You know, they block off some sides of some streets
Well,
for access.
See, again, I'm not concerned about, as concerned about the normal day-to-day traffic for the site, that, you know, the residents of Rhinebeck or even visitors coming and going. What I'm more concerned with is the use of the site to sponsor events that are above and beyond what the intent is in terms of the provision of parking spaces.
Whether this is approved tonight or not, you people live here, you see what these weekends here are with traffic. This is going to be a convenience to get some of the traffic from this congested area over to there. Those people are going to go in there, they're not going to hang out for the whole day. They're going to go in, maybe pick up a cup of coffee, buy some carrots and a pumpkin, and leave.
No one's arguing with that. I just think
And then
the issue is at the farmer's market, there's plenty of parking. You could go up to Mulberry Street, you could walk over to Livingston Street. Nobody wants to walk 2 or 3 blocks. There is no place near this farm stand where you could park and walk to the farm stand. There's no sidewalks from other parts of the village that you safely walk
You're sitting
there.
there telling me there's no problem with parking here on a weekend. You just say that?
Jim Reardon did a study a couple of years ago, and something like 2,000 parking spots in the village center if people wanted to walk 2 or 3 blocks. They circle the parking lot at the farmer's market and wait for somebody to get out like it's Manhattan, waiting for a spot. If they were willing to walk 2 or 3 blocks, they could park on Mulberry, on Livingston, on Chestnut, and walk to the farmer's market. But here, you're isolated out on Route 9, and there's no parking on Route 9, there's no parking on Mill Street. You'd have to park, I don't know where you go to park,
Well-
somewhere else, and then walk, they're not gonna do that. All we're saying is that the 18 spots are what you're gonna have to live with, that's all we're
We
saying.
hear you, and lack of parking
that's
would be a great problem to have, and we can come back and we can put in extra parking spaces.
And car number 19, if they really wanted to go, could go park on South Street and walk up, right?
I mean, I think it's not a problem. I think we're creating one where one doesn't exist. I mean, there's also the issue of prohibiting parking on the remainder of Mill Street. I don't necessarily see the need for it at this point.
Well, that's gonna be the village
It's up to the
board's
village
decision.
board. I mean, it is a public thoroughfare. Everyone in the village pays taxes. I know we're trying to protect poor homeowners, but it's a public street. We get to use it, just like anyone else does, anyone who wants to go shopping. So,
Victoria, what would your position be on a reservation on the map of the additional road parking but not being built in the immediate future?
This whole thing with special events, you know,
Come up to the mic, please.
happening at the farm market. You fill out a special event permit and it's on a case-by-case basis, isn't that right?
it's true, we have to fill out a special event with the
You
village.
take a measured approach and then you say where the parking's gonna be, what we're gonna allow and all of that. So, I think it's on a case-by-case basis. If you have a special event, you have to go to the village for approval anyway. So, I don't see why.
She didn't answer her question.
What's that?
I asked about a reservation on the plan for a future road parking, but wouldn't be built at this time. Essentially, there would be conditions that if it's needed in the future.
So,
So in other words,
And where-
we'd have to
and where
come
it would
back
be
and-
located.
some of the issues just with that though is that we still have to go back to the drawing board to design that, right? I mean,
Well, the
you're gonna
purpose
want-
of the public hearing is to get input, and with the expectation that often proposals will have to go back and be refined.
This is a case-by-case basis, and you know, when you get a special event request, you take an approach and you figure out how you're gonna handle the parking on that case-by-case basis. So,
No, I think what Rebecca was asking, putting on the plans future, like people have,
You
the
want-
state,
you want a
the state
land-based
wants
parking
future
area.
secondary septic systems on
So,
plans for
some-
future possible use.
I mean, I guess I'll talk to my clients. We're potentially open to a land-based parking area. I always see problems with them because, you know, who gets to decide when it's built? At what's the number for requiring it? At that point, what happens if they don't build it? I mean, it sounds great on paper. I prefer that, you know, these are sophisticated business owners. When the need for more parking arises, they're not going to want to lose customers by not having adequate parking.
The reason I make the suggestion is I think the planning board's concern is about having a traffic overflow or a parking overflow if you do become successful. And yes, I understand your point that you're a business and you're going to come back, but in the meantime, you're going to have this period of time where you could have frustration. So I'm making the suggestion as perhaps a middle ground that could both satisfy your concern about not going into that agricultural area at this time and address the planning board's concern about the spillover.
So is that something that the board would consider making a condition of approval? As opposed to having to come back in 2 months with new plans?
Yeah.
In my mind, the police and fire have asked for another one. They're, to me, the experts.
Oh, no, they're not. They're not the experts on parking.
Well, they're experts on safety.
Yeah, they're experts on what they do. They do a great job, but parking is regulated by the village code. It's done based on experience. We have a range of parking. They're at the upper range, beyond the upper, one space beyond the upper range. So people always ask for more parking. They always think they need more parking. And I myself would favor no parking from the driveway to Route 9, because that's an area where people coming in and out around the corner. But there's certainly room for parking on the south side of Mill Street going further out. There's no driveways there. It's, you could fit another 15 or so cars without impacting Mill Street, the residents on Mill Street. It's 25 feet wide. My street is 27 feet wide and parking's allowed on both sides. Here we're talking about on one side only. There's plenty of room for cars to pass.
And what did we say that was there?
And we could certainly put on the plan, reserve parking and a dotted line and make that a condition of approval so that if the future Mill Street becomes congested or there's a specific problem, the village can prohibit parking on Mill Street and the reserve parking can kick in.
Right, I mean, the width of Mill Street expands quite a bit.
Right, the beginning is much narrower than.
Right, And I think primarily that was Sergeant Dunn's major concern, that if there was an overflow of car parking along there, then you're gonna have some issues. So, but from that point back, there is parking.
So again, we wouldn't object if the village did put up no parking signs from the corner to the driveway. That's the village's prerogative. And we were not counting on those spaces for the farm market in any event. You know, we're providing all of our spaces on site.
Well, that's going to be a decision by the village board. They're going to have to, consult about that.
But we can make a recommendation.
Yeah, at least no parking on one side, like no parking on the residential side of the rest of Mill, just along the farm.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Along the farm, yeah.
All right.
And we can put a note on the plan, or a condition on the approval, that says if parking becomes an issue after a 6-month or a year study period, yeah, an extra row of parking can be added to the south side.
Sure, I would just want to make sure that there was some clear threshold for requiring that extra parking. So, determination by the village engineer or village zoning enforcement officer that there's been an issue.
No, there was just a request. The additional parking?
No, I'm saying if you ever were to, if you go the route.
If it becomes a problem.
On Rhinebeck parking, we would want some kind of documentation that it was in fact an issue and that you weren't just.
And who would make that determination?
That would be police, reports and all that.
Well, it would be,
Usually land bank parking, the decision is made by the planning board after a set period of time, at the recommendation of the zoning enforcement officer or the police or whoever.
Right. I mean, I can only enforce what the calculation requires,
Right.
which you comply with.
And 18 is complies.
But I think their point is you can give feedback if you're
Right.
seeing an issue out there. I think you'd also want the village engineer to weigh in on that at the time. And so they'd make a recommendation to the planning board at that time to trigger that condition in the resolution.
Okay.
So I was hoping to do a little summation unless.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment? Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to address the board a little more. You'll have to bear with me.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier that we've been at this since December of 2016. Of course, we disappeared for some time to redo the plans after we heard the concerns of the board members and the public, but we're now almost at December 2018. So this is something that we are looking to get a vote on tonight. Farm markets are important to the continued success of agriculture in New York. They give farmers a place to market their crops, they build brand loyalty, and they put customers in direct contact with fresh grown food. We feel this will really be an amenity for the village of Rhinebeck. I want to remind the board, and I've said this before, that under New York State Agriculture and Markets Law, you have to interpret and apply your zoning law in a manner that won't unreasonably restrict the farm operation. And so this has come up when we've talked about the sidewalks going across the full field. We feel that's an unreasonable restriction. We're talking about creating, more expensive parking where we may not need it yet. Again, you have to apply it in a way that won't be an unreasonable restriction. What you have before you meets or exceeds all of the zoning requirements that are applicable. The agricultural use is a specially permitted use in the district. And what that means is it's a use that your zoning code allows. It's permitted, subject to you finding that it's not going to have a major impact on the community. So I'm just going to talk you through each of your considerations quickly and tell you how we think you should come down on them. The first thing you have to consider is whether the use will be compatible with adjoining properties, with the district, and the natural and built environment. There's been a commercial use on this site for almost 50 years. People bought their houses knowing that there was a commercial-looking building nearby. You're not introducing any new activity to an area. In fact, the prior commercial use was non-conforming, and what we're proposing now complies with your zoning law because it's a permitted agricultural use. The applicant has proposed screening along the eastern boundary, which will provide a buffer between the former commercial, agricultural, and residential uses. This was something that wasn't there previously. Lighting was only included on the plan at your request, and even now it's limited to only that which is necessary to allow customers to safely get to their cars at night. You've also received a letter of support from the adjacent property owner. So we feel that this is compatible with the district and with the standards. The second thing that you have to consider is whether the use is compatible with the established architectural character and use of the structure or structures. Here, I think this is a no-brainer. You have a box right now, and it's going to be made into a beautiful farmhouse. It significantly improves on an existing commercial structure. It evokes a traditional farmhouse and the rural character of Northern Dutchess. 3, you have to consider the adequacy of parking for the proposed use and its accessibility to fire, police, emergency vehicles. We just had a long discussion on this. We have adequate parking. It's on Route 9, so it's always going to be accessible to a fire truck and emergency vehicle. That's a fire access road. You've received comments from the fire department. There was no major comments other than lack of parking, which is not even really a fire concern. Number 4, determination that the proposed use will have no greater impact on the site and surroundings than would full development of uses on the property. It's kind of a weird standard because we have to consider what this would look like at full build out of 12 to 14 residential zoning lots. Right now you're looking at traffic counts of 21 cars during the peak hour. If you had residential structures, you'd probably be looking at a similar number of cars. You'd be looking at more lights, you'd be looking at a loss of farmland, and probably more noise, because each of those houses, each of those cars would be generating more noise. Restrictions and/or conditions on design of structures and operation of the use necessary either to ensure compatibility, etc. So, as you know, the applicant has voluntarily restricted the hours of operation. So the store will close at 8 p.m. in the winter months and at 9 p.m. in the summer months. It may close earlier than that, but it will close no later than those times. And should the applicant ever wish to increase those times, they do know they have to come before this board and get an amendment to the site plan approval. Consistency of the location and the proposed use with the goal of creating a healthy mix of uses that enhance commercial viability in the village of Rhinebeck. This one's interesting because it talks about the mixture of uses. And besides CVS, there's actually no place to buy things when you have to go shopping. I mean, we have nice clothes stores, you can buy a watch, you can buy jewelry, but you can't buy food unless it's takeout. So this is a needed business within the village. There's nowhere to buy fresh produce. You can't walk anywhere unless it's Sunday morning between 9 and 1 to get produce, to get milk, to get eggs. Lastly, consistency with the code. And, that kind of speaks for itself. We've given you the site plan. It has a zoning table. We've talked about parking. We feel we've gone through your code. We've met all those requirements. And so we ask that you consider voting on it tonight. I'm here to answer any more questions you might have.
Right, if you were to decide to plant pumpkins and have people pick their own in the fall, or blueberries or whatever, would you come back to us? Or, that would change things kind of as far as...
So a U-pick operation is part of agriculture, and I don't even think that would require site plan approval.
Okay.
But I will tell you that there are no plans at this time for anything like that. The field has been planted with barley for some time.
Okay.
Mr. Hicks plans on continuing to farm that parcel.
Okay.
So you'll be providing 51% of the material sold in that farmer's market from your sources?
Yes, the applicant is aware that they need
Okay.
to provide 50%. We've previously...
51%, right?
Well, over 50%.
Right.
So 50.1, no. We previously provided you with a produce list
Okay.
showing all the different kinds of vegetables that they grow. And, based on this farm market, they are talking about expanding their offerings. And you heard them mention pheasants before, chicken. They do have eggs. So yes, they are aware of that requirement and they plan to meet it.
So how is the zoning enforcement officer going to know what you're providing from your farms and what you're importing from wherever?
If it becomes an issue, and I can't imagine why it would,
Well, it could, so I would like to know how you're going to.
they will keep logs of you know,
Okay,
what
so,
they're growing,
so you're
what they're
gonna,
buying
so
from
you're
other
gonna
places.
provide the zoning enforcement officer with a log
No,
of,
we're not planning on providing those kinds of materials. I think that's burdensome unless it's an issue and asked, then we will do it. But I think it's a lot. You don't ask any other business to provide, you know, an inventory.
there's no other business that has this qualification? Is there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so.
But I think it's an unreasonable restriction.
Well, there's a reason for this restriction, and the reason is to assure that what's sold there is legitimately produced by the farms associated with it.
I
And
understand.
wait, hold on. The only way that the zoning enforcement officer, who is the person who is empowered to make that determination, will be able to make that determination is if there's some sort of record-keeping mechanism in place to be able to support that.
Anyone who actually comes to visit the store can see, I mean, I've been raising pigs for years, poultry for years, so I know what it's like to have your protein processed. Joe Malafi, I don't know if you've ever seen any products that are processed by Joe. He puts the label with the name of the farm that raised the animal and delivered it to his property, right there on the label of all of the meats that he gives back to you after he butchers it. Same thing happens with USDA certified poultry processors and all that kind of stuff.
So what about all the other produce and other materials, the cheeses and the other things that you're...
Jesus, we're not a dairy.
Well, somebody said before that you're going to be selling cheese.
Sorry, we're not, I mean, that's very possible that we might, but we wouldn't have our...
Well, your attorney said you were going to be selling cheese before.
I didn't say that we're not
She said
selling
she doesn't
cheese.
eat cheese.
I said
Okay.
we're not making cheese.
Okay. So again,
So
what I would like to see in place is some sort of transparent mechanism that allows for the zoning enforcement officer to be able to do the due diligence necessary to ensure that this does not become just a retail outlet.
The zoning enforcement officer is going to be able to come in whenever, he can look at the labels, but I propose, this is a concern, you make it a condition that upon request, we furnish the zoning enforcement officer with that information when he asks. If we
Okay,
have to
so I'm
provide
going
it-
to ask that to be put on the plans.
If we have to provide it monthly or weekly, we're just creating more paperwork, more work.
I'm not asking monthly or weekly, but, you know, I was thinking more
Once a season.
seasonally
Once a season.
would be an appropriate.
So upon request, you know, if there's a complaint, if there's an issue, we'd be happy to furnish him with the percentages of where the food is coming from. It's just doing that monthly is going to be a bit much.
Nobody asked.
No, I don't think we were talking monthly. I think we were talking a couple times a year, and I think it would be good practice to keep a log of which of your operations are sending to the store for that purpose.
Right, I'm sure the store will be keeping a log of where they're getting their.
So you have an inventory, right?
From a safety point of view, I mean, I pick up the news every once in a while, and there are, you know, E. coli and salmonella outbreaks around the country, and the FDA has to track where that food came from. You know, it's like you're going to produce food, you're going to give it to people, if all of a sudden they're getting sick.
I'm sure the business will be keeping, I'm not privy to
Right.
the internal controls, but I'm sure they keep track of where they.
But in order to get
their
approval,
vegetables from.
you've got to be able to prove that over 50% is coming from your enterprises.
Could I ask, how often does the zoning board enforcement officer check the next door for the farmer's market? Can anybody answer that for me?
I'm the zoning enforcement officer.
How often do you check over there?
I don't.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah,
Who else?
you want him to do the thing that...
Wait, just before this turn, wait, just before this turns into a big blow up, there are a different set of rules that applies in an agricultural district for a farm market as opposed to the one that is periodic in there. There needs to be 50% by this operation, the council is well aware of that.
Okay.
We don't need to have a public debate here over that.
All right. So-
Is that clear?
So I can
Just
go
wanna
over
make
next
sure.
door and get my E. coli over here at the farmer's market, because we're not concerned with checking that. But we're gonna check this business down here to make sure that they're going 51%.
No, we're not specifically checking for E. coli. We're checking to ensure that the business operation is meeting the standards set by the Department of Agriculture in New York State,
Well,
which is one of the requirements that they have to be able to have a farmer's market on the site that they requested to put one.
all right, well,
It is not a God-given right to put a farmer's market there.
I would like to see, if we're gonna enforce this business down here, I would like to see this enforced over here, because the number of people that come over there on the weekend. So let's put everybody in the same barrel.
What am I
And now, the other
enforcing?
thing I'm talking
Two
about.
totally
is-
different rules, sir.
Two
It's
different-
not the same. You're
it's-
comparing,
Now, since this has
for a
been
pun,
going
you're
on
comparing apples
since
to oranges.
2016, these people have been paying the taxes to this village since 2016. And I think now it's almost December 2018.
They went
We
away
should-
for over a
We
year.
should make a decision.
We were waiting for them
Thank
to
you.
come back for over a year, and they finally came back and we're working on it. If there's no other comments from the public, I'd like someone to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Anybody else? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so John, where do we stand with the approvals now? The Department of Transportation made all their comments. I think that Victoria's addressed all of them.
Were they all incorporated on the plans?
I believe,
There was one additional comment that needed to be incorporated on the plan, which was, well, they recommended that the access be actually shifted closer to Route 9 because it's a slower portion of Route 9. It's shown conforming to DOT standards. It's a 10-foot offset. So they were recommending an 8-foot offset, which we can definitely show that. So we'll be responding to the DOT item by item.
they also commented on whatever plantings you put in there, not block the sight lines going in and out onto Route 9. There's a lot of shrubs here and some trees here. I know that there's Bill Clark's mall up by the UPS store that has a lot of bushes that have to periodically be chopped down because you can't see the traffic coming, and they still don't even do 30, even though it's in the middle of the village. So you certainly don't want to have anything that would block. This is your best way in and out of here. It's dangerous at the north corner, it's dangerous at the south corner. This is your best level area for making the turns in and out of the farm market.
Actually show. We show the sight lines on sheet 2, showing that all of the proposed shrubs and trees are outside of those sight lines.
Okay.
And that will be our response to the DOT also.
Okay, that was one of their requests.
And there are no power lines to interfere with trees that will be shade trees rather than ornamental?
Correct.
So that they will be high enough that they should not?
That actually drove the decision for the type of tree along Mill Street. There are power lines along Mill Street, so we decided to go with a tree that really only got to 12 to 15 feet in height.
So then we also get back to that discussion in terms of two or three trees on the northern side,
Along the Route 9 side.
along the Route 9 side.
Yeah, I thought we had agreed to that last time.
Right.
And, I'm pretty serious about street trees. We require it for every site plan, particularly commercial site plans. So I don't think that's something that I would be willing to compromise on.
So you guys did make a number of requests at the last meeting, and we satisfied almost all of them except for this tree issue. And part of the reason is that the applicant is putting a lot of money into this project. They're making a beautiful facade. They're spending a lot of money to make new improvements, and they don't want to block it with a tree. The trees are spaced right now in a way that you'll still be able to see the entrance to the market. And when we looked at respacing them, it really blocks the front of that beautiful building.
And this really is not in the center of the village. The village ends at the corner of this lot. So it's
This is in the village,
This is in
from
the
my
village.
perspective, and
It
street
is in the
trees belong
village,
in the village.
which is one of the reasons why it should have a sidewalk to the end, but maybe I won't bring that up right now.
Well, if we are going to bring it up, let me know, because I brought a copy of the Rhinebeck Walks plan.
Yeah, and what does it say?
Do you want to see
Oh,
it?
yeah, we'll bring it up. Sorry, David.
It's okay.
Okay, well, this is good, because now it's in the record. So if you guys could just share this. This is the Village of Rhinebeck Sidewalk Improvement Strategy Plan. You'll see that it creates a half mile from the village center in areas where they feel that sidewalk should be included. The half mile actually ends directly at the proposed driveway for this project. Sidewalk is not even considered, not even for future phase 3, beyond that half mile walkable area. So it's not supported by your own planning document.
So where is the property line here?
Down here.
Because when was this was done in, when did you do this?
I
Because you did
guess
this,
around,
right?
yeah, in 2004, 6 maybe, I don't know.
I'm also going to add that the co-work building had a significant amount of money invested in it recently, and there's no sidewalk required in front of that building. And the board also didn't require sidewalk in front of the new Springbrook Medical Suites across from the hospital. And so you let those projects make improvements and go forward without putting any sidewalk in.
We did require sidewalk at the hospital.
Not the hospital, but the buildings across from it, the new medical center. So
Right.
So there's no sidewalk there, and so you're not applying the law equally. And you have a case here where you are required by state law to apply it in a way that's more beneficial to the farm market. And so I don't see a basis for you requiring a sidewalk beyond the driveway. We're going to exactly where your plan proposes it, and we've addressed this a few times.
So this is 3 trees instead of 4 is what you're asking for?
That's what we're requesting, is the 3 trees. And we can space them differently. We just don't want to block the front of the building. I mean, this is business.
I have no problem with 3 trees instead of 4. I mean, you know, it's...
The 2 trees I want to infill are 100 feet apart. Normal trees in the village are 30 to 40 feet apart. We're compromising already by making them 50 feet apart because it's at the outlying edge of the village. But street trees belong in the village. We require it for every commercial site plan. And that would be inconsistent if we didn't do it here.
So these are 100 feet apart?
We can add
The 2 that are there are
we just
100
don't
feet
want
apart.
it in front of the building. I mean, we can space them.
The 2 that are there, but there'd be 1 in between. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so they'd be 50 feet apart.
There's a fourth.
Actually, when you drive down the road, you look at just the sign from an angle, not from directly in front of the building. So a tree in front of the building is going to be less of a blockage of the sign than one that's angular to the building. Regardless, I didn't think it's a big issue. It's 4 trees instead of 3 trees. It creates a cadence which helps slow down traffic and suggests that you are now in a village because you get regular street trees instead of random street trees. It's what we do. You said we should apply these standards equally. I agree on the sidewalk. We don't apply it on places where we don't have contiguous sidewalks. But we do require street trees on every commercial site plan that I think we've ever done, or we certainly had tried. So I don't see why we shouldn't do it here. And I'm willing to go along with a lot on this thing.
What if they add a 3rd street tree up here?
I can't see where you're pointing.
The northerly corner of the
The
lot.
northerly corner, so that they're spaced equally. There's 4 trees.
Well, then you might be blocking sight lines from Mill Street. I think that's the reason we didn't put one down there, because of the angular nature of Mill Street.
Do you have any ideas, Warren? I mean, we're down to a single tree here.
I know.
We've made all the
So why don't
improvements
you-
we requested. We've changed the door, we changed the parking lot, we added spaces.
So why don't you agree with us and we can move on?
And in a dangerous intersection, you don't want any more obstruction than
Why would this be
you need.
less instruction?
For the person who came and asked about the ZBA ruling and the other conditions, I just wanted to point out that we did respond to a lot of these things, and they have been changes on the site plan, like you said. The lighting and parking is removed from the residential area, the rear landscaping and screening along Mill Street.
These trees don't.
There's a fence that was maintained as well around the a generator. There's been a significant reduction of of tables and seats. It used to be 30 seats, and now it's down to 12 seats. The hours have been limited, so it doesn't run until 10 or whatever it was originally at night. So there have been significant changes to address the concerns of people on Mill Street. But, say again?
This board.
We did address the parking. We talked about it quite a bit.
The village board is the board that controls parking on Mill Street. The planning board has no control over it.
We don't have the right to recommend things to the village board on
They've
public
met the
parking on
parking
streets.
requirement, 18 spots on the property is the parking requirement. The on-street parking has to go to the village board. They're the ones that can declare, put up the no parking signs on Route 9 and on Mill Street. They have to make that determination. So that's to go to the village board. So John will be dealing with that recommendation. So, John, where are we with everything else?
We have to ask the attorney.
Septic,
Septic, we're fine. I mean, everything else is,
And the county did comment that this is a matter of local concern.
Do we want to have the attorney draw up a
Yes.
resolution of adoption for next meeting that would address the parking issue in terms of recommendations on Mill Street and land bank parking, if necessary, to be reviewed on a 9-month to a year period, so it has a chance to establish over the summer of next summer?
Is it possible to get the board to vote tonight conditionally, and then the attorney can write up the resolution?
I'd prefer
Yeah, I would prefer to wait.
to read the resolution before I vote on it.
It'd be November 20th, the next.
in 2 weeks. So, and you'd write that DOT has recommended no parking signs on Route 9, and we would sort of support no parking signs from the back entrance to Route 9 and no parking on the residential side of Mill Street.
The north
all the way
side.
to Parsonage, the north side.
Victoria, are you clear with the enforcement of the inventory? I know the public isn't, but are you
So
clear with?
We think that the state ag markets is the agency that is the one to control whether or not we're meeting that 50% requirement. It's their rule, and they're the ones that come out and do enforcement of it. We'd prefer to leave it to the state and not get the local community involved.
I just don't want the public to think I'm arbitrarily targeting you and putting a whole different set of rules.
No,
Because you know how things get out of hand with things like that.
The USDA's rule, right?
I mean, wouldn't the state
Right.
have inspections periodically? I mean,
Right.
So the state would respond if there was a complaint. If the village started getting complaints and the village made
But those complaints would be funneled through the zoning enforcement officer.
then the state could come down and do an inspection. We would prefer to keep it at the state so that we don't have interlapping levels of jurisdiction.
We had a,
So wait, hold on, we gotta,
What's the proposal that's being discussed? I'm confused between the comments at this level.
We're talking about the 50% rule and who gets to enforce it.
Okay. I think the desire of the board is to have, what we discussed before, is the condition that upon request, possibly up to 2 times a year, that information will be provided to the village.
once or twice a year. We attended a seminar across the street for the town and village planning and zoning boards given by the ag and market guy from Albany. And he talked about all these rules, and I had a private discussion with him afterwards. He said, we understand that when a farm market would start, there would probably be 90% from elsewhere, and as the several years went by and the farm grew, it'd be more and more getting down towards that 51%. And we would expect that would normal evolution of a new operation.
Right. We don't want to have a site plan violation if one of their crops went bad one season and now they had to supplement their vegetables. And so that's why we don't think we can submit a report, but we don't think it's inappropriate for the village to enforce this. We think it really should be with ag and markets.
well, the village would then report it to Ag and Markets.
And ask if this is a problem.
right.
Are you
we
okay
had-
with this?
we had a
Because
problem.
that's a gentleman that I forget his name.
So again, part of what goes on here is that we're dealing with Victoria and Mr. Bender here, and everything seems to be on the up and up. And 2 years from now, the property changes hands. And we've approved things, and then all of a sudden we're dealing with someone who maybe isn't quite in tune with what was discussed and what was agreed upon in this process. So that's why we need to,
That says, you know.
again, that's why we need to have those notes on the plan so that
Farm market will comply with Ag Market's regulations, you know, and we can even cite to that farm market publication where that 50% rule comes up. So it's a note that says we're going to comply, it's an enforceable note on the site plan, but it leaves the enforcement mainly to Ag Markets of that 50% rule unless, you know, unless you need to take us to court for site plan violation. But I think a general note that says we're going to comply with Ag Markets regulations for farm markets would be sufficient to protect the village in case this was ever sold to someone else, as you say, as you are worried about. It requires us to comply with.
Well, again, this is a very special use allowed, that a normal.
Very special.
Right, a normal retail operation is not allowed in that area. And the ability of something to evolve into a retail operation does exist. And we want to take the safeguards to try to prevent that from happening.
I think to the extent that it becomes a note on a plan and condition in the resolution, I think that would vest the zoning enforcement officer with authority. However, if you were in the situation where you had a crop go bad or something like that, I'm sure the Department of Ag and Markets would be coming to your aid in that situation if the village attempted to enforce that. So, you know, I think both sides I think we have to look at, you know, there could be seasons where perhaps the numbers are a little off because of conditions, but I think it's important that the village feel it's getting the information necessary to know that what it's approving there is in compliance with these regulations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know, I understand the concern, and I think a map note would address it.
And you might have a bumper crop of something else, so you'd have a lot more of that.
We'll have a lot of lettuce.
What about that last tree that John is concerned about?
I draw the line.
Huh?
Really? You draw the line?
I want you to comply with our request.
There's no other location on the site for this fourth tree?
What?
Well, anywhere else would either block the proposed sign or infringe on the corner. This is what creates a street tree. If you want to put another one further south of the sign, I would be happy with that. And, you know, as long as it's up forward, you can put one here as opposed to here if you really want it. As long as you can make the case that it doesn't block the sight lines from
Somewhere around here for the light box.
It'll be too close to the septic system.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
So the right place to put it is where I suggested to begin.
Or how about if we put one down here so it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's evenly spaced? That gives you the cadence that you're looking for?
Down where?
You see over here?
South of the,
You see evenly spaced trees, says welcome to the village without blocking.
50 feet to the south of the southern tree?
Yeah.
So you have two on each side of the.
Right? Okay.
I can live with that. Yeah.
Compromise, excellent, thank you.
Hallelujah.
Good job. So so there's no other approvals we're waiting for, John, everything else is clear?
Yes.
All right, so if
I
Rebecca can.
have a couple of things. On the May 4th, 2017, when the ZBA did their decision, they had a whole thing, and we have addressed most of them. But the last one kind of sticks, I think, to the residents of the neighborhood. It says, and the planning board can significantly restrict the hours of operation. And from the original, I think it was 7 to 10, they've now gone, no, it was 8 to 10, now they've gone from 7 to 9. And it's the same amount of hours, they just shifted them.
And we reduced it in the winter months.
I'm just thinking because it's a residential neighborhood, you got houses behind, you got houses across the street, I would be a little bit more pleased if it was like an 8 to 8.
I mean,
With the lighting?
I also add that it's an agricultural use that you can't unreasonably restrict.
That's 12 hours
So-
of
so they-
retail.
They voluntarily restricted those hours, so in the winter,
Well,
it's going
it's-
to close at 8.
So you're talking about 7? Open at
7 to 9, and I would think it would be better for the neighbors if it was 8 to 8. But that's my one of 5
She
opinion.
has something to say.
Hey, I'm a neighbor, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning time, nobody's around, it shouldn't bother nobody. They're not gonna make noise, just going in the building, get your
Public
stuff
hearing's
and go home.
closed.
Public hearing is closed.
So, you know, they were hoping to be able to sell coffee to people going to work. If the hours don't work, they can always reduce them themselves, but the garbage trucks come out at 7 a.m.
Right, they can reduce them, but we do want to have them within a window that is reasonable within a residential area.
And if it's primarily a produce market, 8 o'clock is reasonable. That's when Adams opens, at 8 o'clock.
I mean, do you restrict, I don't believe you restrict the hours on any other village businesses.
None of them are this kind of business. And you've spent hours and hours explaining to us how unique this operation
It's
is.
unique as a farm market, but
Right, you know, well, that's
if
exactly
you don't
it.
restrict the hours of operation of any other business in the village, I don't see why you would restrict the hours of operation of this one.
Because, again, it's in a residential district. And that seems to be a sticking point for you, that residential thing, and we have an obligation to protect those people in the residential district that live on Mill Street, not the people that live on South Parsons Street.
Route 9, so it's not like there's going to be activity towards the back, towards the residential area. The entrance is on and off Route 9 for the most part. But the question I wanted to get some clarification on is this parking condition. If you are going to require it, we're hoping that it will just suffice if we show an area for future parking and that we don't have to spend extra time fully engineering a parking plan at this point. We want to be
No, I think, you know, what the police and fire did was just to draw this
Yeah, but
little
they have
extra
to, they have
section.
to space it out.
You space it out, or,
But that drawing wasn't,
right, to space.
I think it can be referred to in a note rather than on the plan
Right.
itself.
Yeah.
It can be engineered at a later
The
time.
location of,
engineered in.
Yeah.
Future.
right.
Are we happy with all the lighting, with all the fencing and screening of Mill
So
in the
is this-
back? We're all-
is there a stipulation in terms of the lighting that we discussed last time, that the lights would go off at?
Did we just,
We discussed that it would go up an hour after the last employee.
Right.
Yeah.
So that needs to be added.
And we've agreed on all the fencing to screen Mill. That's all on the plans now.
The fencing's been added.
And the dumpster enclosure?
Dumpster enclosure's there.
Okay.
Like I said, we heard you at the last meeting. We really endeavored to make all the changes.
Okay, I think we've got it. Is anything else from anybody else? So we make sure that we're not asking any more questions next time.
Right, I mean, we would, I asked again if you would vote tonight with your conditions so that we don't have to come back for another meeting.
And I think we would want to read a draft resolution before it.
Right.
I think Rebecca will draw it up and share it with you before the meeting, ask any questions, and then we can meet and just.
We will vote in 2 weeks.
And then you're all for
We'll vote in 2 weeks.
Thanksgiving, right.
The public hearing is closed.
Oh, the public hearing is closed.
Yes.
I think what she wanted to talk about was, again, that they need to start ordering for the next season, which is why we're pushing.
You guys disappeared for over a year. We were saying, where are, I kept saying to John Fenton, where are they? Are they coming back? Are they coming back?
Farmers did. We have been working and planning and making sure that our crops are doing well, and we are looking down the barrel of a really
Okay.
cold long winter, and we do need to order our seeds and know what's going on for next
When
year.
do you
So 2 weeks
order
from,
them, like-
2 weeks from
But I
tonight.
respect your concerns as well. Oh, actually.
Okay, well, we heard you. Thank you for
Thank you
productive
very much,
meetings. And
Okay.
we did disappear, but it was to come up with a much better plan.
Yes, you did.
that
It's a
everyone
much
was
better
happy
plan.
with, so.
Excellent, it was a good job.
All right, well, thank you for your time, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Right, and then we can not see you again for a long, long time, maybe. Let's hope.
All right. Very patient. The second item on the agenda is the public hearing for 108 East Market Street.
You want to ask everybody to please leave?
If you guys could please step out in the hallway to continue your conversations.
Yep, you too.
Nothing. Okay, the camera say it. All right, let's see.
You don't have to order your seats in November.
Yes. You've been patient.
Is there anyone here for the
It's 2
public hearing?
weeks.
Yeah, it's
November
20th.
20th.
All right,
Yeah, I will be here. I might not be here the 3rd.
Can I have a motion to open the public hearing for 108 East Market Street?
Ryan, can you close the
I'll
door
make
there?
that.
And
Second.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You are very welcome. Have a wonderful evening. You will get my draft by email.
Kara's on Diane. Huge crowd for the public hearing. Okay, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I made that.
we already
Second.
did it, yes.
And a second, okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Warren.
Good evening, I'm Warren Smith, architect, here representing Jeffrey and Nancy Main, who are with us this evening. Again, about 108 East Market Street, another project long under consideration before the board. As you recall from our last meeting, this went before the zoning board. In fact, this board had to make a recommendation to the zoning board to move the location of the house. So in fact, we got permission from the zoning board to move it from, we got a foot off the property line, 5 feet off the eastern property line, and but we're keeping it in the same relation to the street, and so we needed a variance for that too, because we're less than the 10-foot minimum setback. But we're trying to comply with the other requirement to sort of be in line with their neighbors. So we sort of dealt with the zoning aspect as well as the garage, which is going to be reconstructed in its current proximity to the west property line, but moved back a bit. And of course, the other concern that we've been looking at with this board for some time is, you know, what we do with the existing residents. And we have agreed that we're going to salvage as much of the front part of the structure as we can, the main timber framing, the historic 12/12 windows, maintain the shape and proportions as we renovate and build essentially behind it a new house for Jeff and Nancy. And so what I want to show the public, not been familiar with it all along, is the proposal for 108 East Market Street. It's very hard to see from the back, but there is a dotted line, the outline of the existing house and its location, very close again to the east property line, and then there is the reconstructed and shifted house, and the overall footprint is sort of similar, except in the back there was an addition with sort of campus quarters, and now it's much closer with the screen porch behind it and the deck, and then the garage back here, shifted back to the existing garage location. But as with the farm market, it's a lot easier to understand this when we look at drawings other than a site plan. So I have the board receive the 4 elevations of the house, which are simply flat drawings of it from the street, from the back, and then of course from the west side and from the east side, but more relevant again, or easier to understand, are 3D renderings. It was interesting that the consultant that was hired to evaluate the house and make a recommendation to the planning board as to whether it should be demolished or not, pointed out that the real significance of this house was not so much the house itself, although it was by virtue of its age from 1800, but it was really its relationship to the street and the other houses along the street. It's sort of being close to the street as old houses were. On both sides of the street, you'll sense coming into the village from the east, particularly, all the houses are very close to the street, and then of course, as you move further in and get to the residential district, they're further apart, and of course, if you look at the other streets that developed later, South Street being the first street, and then Market, and later Livingston, and Chestnut, and so forth, houses got further and further back, and the lots got bigger. And that reflected changing decades of architectural styles, obviously the growing wealth of the community, many different factors. But the point that was important, that was really made, was that the house here in a row and its relationship to its neighbors told a significant bit of the history of Rhinebeck and the development of the village. And he felt that was very important to maintain. He also identified some very interesting things in the framing of this. Not to get too technical, but it appeared that on the second floor, originally, it either was initially built with a lower eave, such as an eyebrow colonial, but maybe almost immediately they decided to raise it up and make it a higher eave, because there's a cross member, like a Gerber or Perlin, about halfway up. And on the second floor, you can see from the inside, it's still been exposed, but again, the roof line was higher when it was finally built. So he recommended that if we could salvage pieces of this front building, that would be good. But we identified immediately we wanted to save the 12 over 12 windows because they are original. Some of them are on the front, some of them are on the side. Our intent is to use as many of them as toward the front of the house as we can. And again, to salvage intact framing members to create the form of the house. But we are raising it up. Over time, roads get raised. Periodically they get repaved and other things happen. This house, both because of that and because of deterioration of the wood structural steel, has sort of settled down in the ground, which is one reason why some time ago the door was moved from the front to the side and that little octagon was put in the front. And in fact, when you step into the house, you actually step down. And they had sort of plywood floor built up so you could make that transition. But all in all, the house has suffered neglect over time and a lot of water and rot around the perimeter. So as we reconstruct the house, we're going to raise it up a little bit. So the street view here simply shows a house that's a little higher off the grade and a little bit further from the east property line. But it maintains the street line here of this house, which someday will have its due, we hope. And then the house that's nearly invisible, the Decker house, and then finally the former deli down there. So the relationship of it to its neighbors and to the street will be maintained. And it's going to be a very simple-looking, unpretentious house, just doing its best to fit in with the neighborhood the way the house that it's currently at 108 has been for a couple hundred years. So that's the substance of the plan here. As I say, we've discussed it with the planning board over several meetings and considered what we can do and what's reasonable to do there. The entrance will be back on the front, again up a couple of steps as opposed to down a step. There'll be a entrance on the driveway here, and the garage setback will be a detached garage, and a little bit bigger than the original one simply because it will accommodate more modern vehicles. But that's pretty much the substance of the proposal. I'll be happy to answer any questions from the public and of course from the planning board.
Any members of the public like to come up and make a comment?
My name is Jeff Christensen. My wife Linda and I live at 37 South Street, a few lots west and one lot south. Along with pretty much everyone we've spoke to that live in the village, especially in our neighborhood, we kind of feel that when you leave the town and go east on Market Street, it's very pleasant except two houses that are pretty much eyesores, and this is one of them. And we really believe that the plan that they've come up with will be a real asset to the village, and we strongly urge you to approve it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to comment? Sorry you all had to wait so long.
It was entertainment.
Exactly. Our civic duty on election day. Steve Paganuzzi, living with my wife Janine King.
In my old house.
Formerly the Decker house, as I've heard said before, but on the corner of 110 East Market Street, right next to this property. And we both want to, support this plan. It does become more conforming in terms of it gives us some more space, because currently the house is right on our property line. I think that the village and all the people involved in this have worked hard to try to maintain the neighborhood, and we look forward to having the Mains as our neighbors once the house is up and running. So we do support it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to comment? Okay, can I have a
Make a
motion?
motion to close the public hearing?
Oh, I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think we've been through this.
So no changes to the plan other than what we know.
That's right, you had some questions about the landscape lighting, so I have
Right.
lighting that would be, this is all 60-watt LED bulbs, a light at the front door, a light at the side door, all very low, and the specs on it.
Residential in character?
Absolutely, right. It's
Okay.
definitely something. And then we talked about the landscaping here, and I'll incorporate this on the site plan. The owners have told me they'd like to have some box along the front, so there's something other than just grass there. And the side, there's a flower bed here, and obviously there are existing trees and so forth in the back that.
So you can take down that concrete piece?
We will.
Yeah?
But nothing too ambitious here. There's not a lot of room along here, maybe a ground cover like Pakistan or something.
Myrtle.
Myrtle, crepe myrtle or vinca, yeah, anyway.
Might even be some that'll grow over that way.
Well, actually, you've got quite a stand next door, so it might just continue to grow. But again, I can incorporate these notes on that plan. But we did talk.
Well, we kind of needed this because we need a landscape plan.
I know you do.
Whenever we.
Yes.
So it was
As part of
nothing that
site plan
was particularly contentious in any sense.
Sidewalk should continue across the driveway.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that on the plans?
Yeah, well, no, it doesn't, it shows a driveway.
Yeah,
but
drawn that way, but we understand that that's.
Well, it should be on the plans.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
We don't need asphalt the sidewalk.
Right, no.
Right, it doesn't do that. I know your program.
There are street
doesn't
trees
draw-
in front of that building, right? As I remember.
Program.
No street trees in front of it.
Nancy Kelly.
I don't think there's room for
This
it.
is through Nancy
There's one
Kelly.
here at the edge, it's sort of at the edge of
We
the.
gotta-
Yeah, it's at the, both edges of
Right.
the edges of the property.
And then there's.
There's
right,
a
and
really
further,
big one.
A really big one that
And that can certainly be maintained.
is probably too big.
In the file.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
I remember when it wasn't so big.
We may have to limb some of the branches.
I don't think you can have a
All right.
street tree, it's really too tight.
All right. So there are regular street trees along.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, many of them are coming down, but
I know, because of the wires primarily.
the
Yes,
wires.
the wires are on that side of the street.
They are, right, they're really cool.
And there used to be a contiguous row of street trees there, and over time, they've
Yeah.
disappeared, and,
They're still pretty reasonably contiguous. There's a few gaps.
yeah, a lot more gaps than there used to be.
But it is fairly narrow.
is, right.
between the sidewalk.
I know,
It's
too
not
narrow.
To put them behind the sidewalk, no, it'll be a smaller tree when it goes in.
Okay.
Bonsai.
No, I'm happy with this.
The garage, we don't have any plans, elevations, narrative of the garage, there's a second floor.
Right, right, we don't have any pictures of the garage. What is the,
There's just this, and that's a good point, I can give you that.
there's a window on the side, the same thing as we dealt with Connie. There's a
only
window
fire.
on the side of your plan, if you look closely. What is there anything
It's
upstairs?
just a desire to have storage up there. There's no plan for any other use up there.
Is there an interior stair, an outside stair?
No, there would be an interior space.
So you'll get us plans for that, so that,
Okay, so we'll just wait till one more meeting.
Right, I think, I don't think,
so there were no,
one,
I mean, it's a relatively simple garage.
Right.
It's a one-car garage.
So one car garage and storage,
Yes.
right, there's a little window
Not
here.
planning on putting
snow
a family
blower,
up there.
lawnmower.
So again, we kind of have to have that to be able to,
Yes, November 20.
So are we not able to vote on it this evening because we need the garage plans, or can we come back at a later date to get approval?
is there a reason we can't vote on the house?
On the house?
I think we can
Tonight?
vote on it myself.
Yeah, I think we can vote on the house
Yeah,
tonight,
that's
and
fine, then
the
November
garage is
20th,
simple.
Right.
Just have the garage for us.
When I bring you the site plan with the sidewalk going across the driveway and the notes on the vegetation, I can give you a sheet on the garage as well.
okay. I'm good with that.
Okay,
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
And 3 conditions. 1, that we get plans for the garage, elevations, I guess, for the garage.
Sure.
2, that the sidewalk continue across the driveway, and what was the third one? Thought there
Well,
was a
I'll
third.
put the notes on that landscaping plan on this.
Oh, yes, the landscaping plan.
On the, right. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your patience with us.
I've made photocopies.
I have 3 decades of this old house and old house journal sitting in my garage. If you would like to take them and just see what's been done.
Yeah, I mean, we're planning on, for example, trying to
You know why they want that place to open at 7? It occurred to me, that's gonna be
I got
the
3
corporate
decades
place.
worth of
All
magazines,
of
tons of
those
pictures.
guys
so-
are gonna have.
And guess how many
18
trucks they're gonna
Guess
have?
how
That's what I was trying to get to.
We're still in session
I
here.
don't think anybody's gonna buy cord at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Did anyone get to look at August 21st and September 4th? I know we want
Yes.
to close and get
I
out of
did.
here.
Okay, I had a number of comments.
So did I. But
Can we just submit them? They can do a compilation, or is there anything big?
Well,
It's mostly like editorial wording things. We could just submit.
I
mean, like,
skim them.
explain the driveway is proposed, the curb cut will be reviewed and the visibility can be completed. What is visibility?
Well,
I crossed that out. I crossed that sentence out. I said you don't need it.
Okay, well,
So maybe we should just go through it quickly then. Just take,
which one are we on?
let's do it in 5 minutes. August 21st, the first paragraph. The CEO, like halfway down that, John Fenton, CEO, explained that when a driveway is proposed, the curb cut will be reviewed, period. And visibility can be completed once anew, we'll cross that out.
right.
And then, 2 more lines down, any new construction,
If planned for the second
If-
lot. Any new construction planned for the
the
second lot.
board remind the public that any new construction, if planned for the second lot,
Get away with the if.
right, I
Plan.
crossed out the if, has to go through all planning and zoning processes, period.
And we get rid of Mrs. Brind or whatever.
Yes,
All right?
because the new
And then
house
on the
actually
motion?
doesn't require site plan
This is
approval.
August 21st we're on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right, all right,
Okay, now I
under the motion there,
To close the public.
a motion was made by Mary Quinn to approve the request for subdivision with the condition of approval of the ginkgo tree, that the ginkgo tree will remain when site plans are submitted for the new lot.
I took out site, because it won't require a site plan.
Okay,
Just plans are submitted for the lot. So I'll have to do plans for a building permit.
You got that?
I will give you my copy with little things.
The next thing, the board made a correction, comma, to be reflected in the minutes, comma, that this proposal was for both site plan and special permit, period. Now, the next sentence confused me. Mr. Davidovich presented the plantings for the hedgerow to be used was hawthorn, and the hedgerow would be completed as work progressed. The plantings for the hedgerow,
so, Mr. David, presented a hawthorn hedgerow, plans for a hawthorn hedgerow,
Good. That's-
period.
period, that would be completed as work progressed or something, if you want to say that it's not going to be done immediately.
All right, now, the conditions are very confusing. It's really important. The street tree west of the driveway must be replaced. The driveway is not wide enough to back out of the driveway. Do not reverse onto the grass.
Take that
Take
sentence
that
out.
out.
Take that out.
The driveway is not wide enough to back out, period.
So the applicant must create a gravel area
For the
for
turnaround.
the turnaround, something like that.
Right.
Because the driveway is not wide enough to
Right.
back out.
Right, because the driveway is not wide enough to back out, the applicant must create a gravel area for a turnaround,
Right.
period. Okay?
Right down at the bottom, the board encourages that there should be plenty of room for planting and screening for a new driveway. Adding the planned fence should be double. Again, it's more of a grammatical thing, but that's not really a sentence. Adding the planned fence should be double-sided.
Yeah, you should just after driveway, put a comma and then
Right,
continue the sentence.
the proposed fence should be double-sided.
Where did we just jump to?
Fifth line up from the bottom.
Okay, we're at 13 through 15. Fifth line.
And the last sentence, the board made it clear, tree commission will replant the street tree in the fall, and the other trees on the property should be saved, period. You don't just say as many of them as possible. The other trees on the property should be saved,
Or as many of the
period.
other trees on the property as possible should be saved. Go, David, go.
The next conditions. The table must be, the second condition, the table must be revised to include the footage or the,
So
of
it
the
should,
deck
it
in the back.
should indicate
Square foot.
the lot coverage table must be revised to include the coverage of the deck in the back.
Right.
It's the lot coverage table. And the pergola also needs to be included in the lot coverage table. In the next one.
And then, got that? The next, the last one, the relocated street tree, comma, if it does not survive after relocation, comma, take out it, must be replaced. You don't need, it's too many its.
How about the relocated tree must be replaced if it does not survive?
Okay,
We'll make it simple.
right. And the last line of that page, the board explained to the public present in the audience that the bank was, add the word that.
I took out the, under request, comma, that the last portion of that paragraph to replace with proposed pear trees. It's actually 6, but all that stuff about the square, they didn't propose that anymore.
Right.
The bank hasn't done anything about those logos, I guess.
No, except
I thought they were hoping we would just ignore it and they
Ignore
would
it,
fade away
and
on their
they'll
own.
fade away.
I forgot, the third sentence of that. The third sentence of that paragraph says, this is not good.
No,
The
actually, we
the
did
board
say there was
explained that
something
when the bank was approved for the conversion of their logo and insignia from savings to just Rhinebeck Bank, the bank began painting the parking spaces. All we wanted to say is that
The logo
the
on
bank
the parking
painted
spaces is considered
a
additional
sign.
signage.
and needs to be
Considered
removed.
additional non-approved
You
signage.
can delete all of that and just say the board felt that the logo on the painted parking spots is signage and needs to be removed.
Period.
Oh, you've got that, and you've got that. This is considered additional signage and is not approved. It was not part of previous approvals. That can come out too. Just want to say, the board felt that the logo painted on the parking spots was signage and needs to be painted over.
And not painted blue in the future.
The next page, I think, this, the third line, I think it's Vinca Myrtle is the name of the plant.
Where are you?
The next page, the third
Are we
line.
on Jeffrey
I
and
had Vinca
Nancy
Minor.
Mann?
This was John, do you remember?
We're still on the bank, or are we on?
I think I probably said Myrtle, but I don't know if Vinca Minor is.
It's Vinca Myrtle, rooted cuttings is what they're called.
Came up when I Googled it. so, Vinca Myrtle?
Vinca Myrtle. And what you can do with that little
Just put
paragraph,
ground covering.
ground covering.
Well, Myrtle is
Myrtle's okay.
highly superior ground cover
Well,
compared to most of the rest.
didn't I suggest that they use myrtle?
Then the next sentence, by expanding the bed, it will allow for these replacement trees to have room needed to grow, period. And you can take the rest of that and solve the, not so much poured concrete, take that out. And a few lines down, Vinca Myrtle again. And then the next sentence, also,
Vinca
it
minor.
will. Vinca
Vinca
Myrtle.
minor.
Huh?
Vinca minor?
Myrtle.
Vinca minor.
What? Stop. Also, it will
Diameter.
lessen the damage to the concrete sidewalk. That's all you got to say there.
Okay.
You've got also, so as to not create future damage to the concrete sidewalk, just say it will lessen damage to the sidewalk.
Agenda.
The bank logo insignia are to be taken off all bank parking spots. Didn't we say that?
Well, this is part of the
Those
motion.
are the motion, okay. Are to be taken off all the bank, and are not to be painted blue in the future.
I thought you were already there when I said that.
Okay. The motion for Jeffrey and Nancy Main, any disturbance in,
I took out any disturbance in,
right. any
just
disturb-
start at the front left, is to be
front, right.
reconstructed.
Any disturbance, didn't, I have that redlined. And then the last couple of words, the board also endorsed moving the, not to move.
And then,
I was done with that.
4 lines down in the motion, will retain the historic mass of, not East Market Street, the historic mass of the house on East Market Street.
And the last one, I had no comment, they didn't come back. Anything else?
I was walking down
Can I-
South Street the other day, and on the south side of South Street, up towards the deli, people have done a beautiful job on the sidewalk, blue stone, like smaller, beautifully.
A lot of sidewalks have been repaired
Yeah,
over the
no,
past
it was,
year.
it was lovely
People
to
have done a good
see.
job. Can I have a motion to approve them, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of August 21st,
As amended.
as amended. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Here's my notes.
Give those to.
Okay. Give those to Ryan. You can give those to Ryan, too. Want to give those to Ryan?
You can, I'm fine. You go ahead, give it to him, give it to him.
All
Take
right.
my minutes.
September 4th. I didn't have any questions about the first page,
Oh,
but you might.
it should be reformatted in terms of the bullets. So that things kind of
Oh, line up.
line up properly.
They jump in, they're indented instead of starting at the dots.
Okay.
Word,
Each line, yeah.
so Amalgamated Agricultural Associates. Let me see the first sentence. The chair, David Miller, started the discussion by covering the main points from the last time the applicant was before the board. And then 3 lines down, some opening statements and began the presentation. Not begin. Let me see, agricultural features.
About 2/3 of the way down, where it says stated by applicant counsel, Mrs. Polidoro. I would do Ms. Polidoro, comma, the applicant counsel stated that soups and pre-made items will be offered for purchase.
Oh, good.
Something like that.
I had a question mark, yes.
Right, I mean, that's,
On the third bullet down, take out the word "two," as it implies you get 2 entrances on Mill Street and 2 on.
right.
Maintaining an
Wait a
entrance.
minute.
Oh, the third bullet. maintaining an entrance on Mill
Well,
and Route
street and an
9.
entrance on Route 9.
Right.
One on Mill, one on 9.
One
And
on
instead
Mill.
of-
Maintaining two entrances.
Instead of entrance, maybe
Okay.
access on Mill Street and access on Route 9, since it's both an entrance and an exit. Because we don't want everybody just entering. Because then they run
Then
out of
parking
parking.
would be a problem.
Yes.
And roughly in the middle, there's a bullet that says outside outdoor tables for sitting. I think it's like outside or just picnic tables for sitting.
Exterior tables,
Yeah.
or exterior seating at tables.
What was it? And the last bullet on the page, the board may recommend to village
The village board.
the village board that there be no parking signs installed on Mill Street, or there be no parking on Mill Street. We just did that. The board may recommend to the village board that there be no parking on Mill Street.
You know, we're trying to save paper, I'm appreciative.
We're ready to turn the page?
I've turned the page.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on page 3.
Halfway down, too many dogwoods.
That was from John.
Yeah, it just should say too many dogwood trees.
Too many dogwood trees or too many dogwoods, yeah.
Up above that, it says aisle between parking
Parking aisle between, right?
is 28 feet and should be 24. You had the
It's the
numbers
opposite.
reversed.
Okay.
And I would say on the fourth bullet down on that page, it should say the possibility for extending sidewalk further south on Route 9.
Right.
So this is what I did with that sentence.
So the bottom, the last sentence in the Beekman Arms,
Well, I have the second sentence in the Beekman Arms. It's a,
go ahead.
Caleb Birch, representing the owners of the Beekman Arms, explained that the 2 trees in front of the hotel must be removed.
Comma, as recommended by their retained arborist.
As recommend, yeah, as right. Must be
So
removed.
Ryan, do you read these out loud after you write them?
Well, I did, and I thought it was a run-on sentence, so that's why I broke it out.
Well, you have a habit of making a second sentence that isn't as fully a
It's in a
sentence.
sentence.
It can be
Yeah,
long. It
there's
just
3
needs
times
to
in
be
that paragraph where the
brought
second
to
sentence isn't a sentence. So it's not so bad to put a comma and,
I don't know, I just found with this, the discussion was repetitive, and I just tried to simplify the notes I took within the minutes, but
I think we can
I
simplify it
understand
just to say as recommended by their arborist. You can cross out large limbs have fallen down concerning guests and patrons about the health of the tree.
I think
No,
that's.
they
what
actually said that.
Yeah.
You want to leave that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the bottom,
Bluestone,
the board reaffirmed the unconformity. I don't think that was the asphalt, gravel, and bluestone. Bluestone
is what we do want.
desirable.
Yeah, I changed that last sentence to say, the board reaffirmed that asphalt and gravel should not exist in front of the most historic building in the village.
And that's what I
just
think,
take out unconformity.
right. And
Yeah.
bluestone is, take out bluestone. That's what
Right.
we want.
Right, we want
We don't want asphalt or gravel, we do want bluestone.
I thought that was referring to the bluestone that they put in way on West Market Street.
That's fine.
That's fine, that's what we
That's
want.
what we want, that's.
Yeah, but I thought that was referring to where it goes from asphalt to that bluestone.
We want bluestone from the post office's bluestone to the Beekman Arms bluestone, turning the whole corner
everything should be bluestone.
On that corner, yeah.
on that corner. We do not want asphalt or gravel, we want bluestone.
Maybe a
And that
yellow
was
brick
it.
road. All right, make a motion to approve as edited.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait, you're the chair.
That's okay. Can we hold up any comments till next meeting?
Meeting's over.
Meeting's over.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I have comments on the next minutes too, the October 2nd, so
I
you can
haven't
take
looked at
them.
them yet. Oh, I didn't look, okay, here's October 2nd, maybe you get a chance, you could look at them and resend October 2nd, and then we can sign up on October 2nd on the 16th. All right, we're adjourned.
Polls are closed.
Thank you, the polls are
We
closed.
could be in a